Hi, what we're going to be looking at today is how to attach LED strip to the back of a monitor. The reason I'm doing this is because I did have some LED strip left over when I was doing the recessed LEDs in my lounge ceiling. I have several strips, reels of strips left over and a couple of controllers. I was going to attach it to the back of my desk instead, but in this instance I thought it would be a great idea instead to attach it to the back of the monitor. The first thing I did is I prepared the monitor by taking it off of its stand and also wiping the back of the screen down with some isopropyl alcohol, which is IPA. You can get IPA off the likes of eBay for a couple of quid for a small bottle. You can buy it up to something like 98% proof. This is not like vodka or gin or something like that. It's almost like a surgical spirit, but it's used quite a lot in electronics and for cleaning stuff. So it's quite useful if you've got some in the house, as long as you treat with all chemicals with the utmost respect. So let's have a look at what we've got. First of all, what I've done is I've taken a little bit of this LED strip. As I said, I had a few bits left over. They're not particularly great quality. They do the job. They light up pretty bright. And as I say, the controllers are okay. The controllers in particular, if I can find one to hand, these particular models, these ones are the Arilux LC04s. The difference really with the 04 is it does come with infrared remote control. You're not really ever going to use that, to be honest. I personally don't. I have it in case it's there, but I got them as part of the LED strip when I first bought them. It does allow between 5 and 28 volt. These strips in particular are 12 volt. I wish probably now that I would have got 24 volt. The main difference is 24 volt can do longer runs without using so much power, so it runs at a lower ampage. So if you do get the option, 12 volt is fine, but if you can get 24 volt ones, that's great. You've got to get a power supply that kind of matches it. As I said, in this instance I've got a 12 volt power supply. For 5 meters you're looking at roughly 5 amps, so class it as 1 amp per meter. In this instance I think we're looking at about maybe 2 meters maximum, so a smaller power supply should be able to do. You could probably get away with 2 or 3 amps or even 4 amps, but I wouldn't really suggest going for any real distance with anything lower than a 5 amp. In my lounge, for example, I use, because I've got, it's a long room, it's 5 meters long roughly, and 2.5 meters wide on the ceiling. So as you can imagine, I had a few bits left over. What I've done is I've put them all back onto a reel, and I'm using this reel just to do this example here. So as I say, we've got the first bit of strip. Now the problem that we're going to have is that this is not, first of all, it's not a flat back, so that's going to be fun. It shouldn't be a problem, but needless to say, there you go. But also the fact that you've got a USB port at the side, and you've got these further 2 bits down the bottom here for the recess for the things like USB, power, VGA, DVI, HDMI, etc. And of course you've got the mounting bracket on the back. What I'm going to be doing is trying to keep it as consistent as possible, which means that if I do just down this section here or just along the bottom, I'm probably it's going to get probably maybe too warm, or I'm certainly going to knock it if I'm putting in or removing cables. So I've decided that I'm going to try and keep it as consistent of an edge as possible. Now I've already cut 1 bit to length, as you can see here. It's important when cutting this strip that you cut it in the right places. The right places in particular is, as you can see, you've got these cut marks down on the copper traces. You can use them, or you can cut where your solder marks are. There's some solder marks there. You can cut down there as well. But if you cut down the solder marks, it makes it slightly more difficult to join them up using the methods that I'm going to show you. I did get, as I said, several cut-offs with this. So what I did is I got a load of the cut-offs and soldered them all back together again into proper lengths of strip. There's some, I wouldn't say the best soldering in the world, but it does work. For example, you can see here, it does work. So, you know, it's no biggie, but as you can see, I've utilised my offcuts. You know, you've got no reason to throw them away. I mean, they do work. If you use a circuit tester just to make sure that you get continuity, there's no reason why you can't use those bits. As I said, my room wasn't quite 5 metres long, so out of 5 metre length strips, I had bits left over like this. And I've got reels and reels. As you can see here, I've got another length of offcut, but this one comes with its proper end on it. I would suggest, obviously, if you have any proper ends left, it's a good idea to keep those. I'm not going to be showing you how to solder the ends back on. In this particular example, the Arilux controllers, which are these ones here, the LC04s, excuse me, although they give you the power red, green, blue and white, that is not how they're actually wired. The red and the green on these particular controllers are actually swapped over. So just bear that in mind. So if you did, for example, like I did originally here, where you've got the power, which is the black, you've got green, red, blue and white, those red and green connections are actually swapped over. So just bear that in mind, because if you don't, you're going to end up where when you want it to go red, it goes green, and when you want it to go green, it goes blue. So just remember that. Right, so what I'm going to do is, if you look at this longer strip here, we've actually got at this end some solder already there. Now, what I should probably do is to get that solder off. I'm not really sure whether that's what I want to do with this. I might use this other bit of strip that I've got here. But again, it's all been used before, so it's not the best quality, but it should do what you want it to do. So, if I say, right, okay, put on a first length of strip, then what we want to do is we want to marry that up so that we get some consistency around the screen. And as I said, I can't put it across here for obvious reasons. So I should really try and get it as far down as possible. Now, if I look at that, we've got a good end at that corner. We've got a good end over here. So what I'm going to do is I'll get the scissors. And as you can see, I'm going to cut along that edge. Now, as you can see, it's got a nice clean edge now. I've not cut it too short. If you cut it too short, it's not the end of the world. You can probably solder it back on again. But you've got to kind of ask yourself if that's the way you want to go. You should really just try and be as careful as you can. As I said, what I'm going to do for this is, first of all, I'm going to stick this length on up at the top here. I'm going to try and go as high as I can without it really getting onto the vents. I could do it over the vents if I wanted to. It's not really going to cause masses of problem, but I should think that the best way to do this is just use the adhesive that's already there. Okay, so we've got the first bit on. Now, what we're going to do is we've got to attach the second bit. We've got some short lengths that we need to cut and put on first. But what we should really do at this stage is look at how we can join these corners with other lengths to strip. There are different ways of doing this. I'll show you on this small piece, this offcut. Well, you can get extension cables like this, which is great for going around longer lengths of corners. Because it's all fixed, it's not really going to end up going a good corner without bending quite heavily, such as that. What you can do, of course, is you can pull these apart and this will allow you to get a better amount of flexibility on it. What you can also use, which excuse me, which I've bought, as you can see, there's straight through connectors. We've got some of those extensions, and we've got corners. Now, I don't particularly like using these, and there's a good reason why. And that is really, it's a one-time hit on use. They're okay. They're not terrible, I've got to be honest. But you do tend to get quite a bit of wear on them as time goes on. What happens is you get the strip that you've got here, and these will actually go and fit underneath like so. Now that's all great. However, you haven't really got the finest of connection on that. I know from first-hand use. Originally in my ceiling I was going to use these. And they didn't work that fantastic. Of course, when they're up above a ceiling, it's really hard to work with them. So I didn't use these. But for this instance, I should think it'll be fine to use something like this. Purely by the fact that it's more accessible. You're not working upside down in a very small space. So, yeah, absolutely. You should be able to go with these. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these to go around at least 3 corners. So this is an example. As if we go to the end here, and we lift up the small bit on the sticky edge, and we feed it back there. We pull back, obviously the adhesive's already off, and then we pull it back, and we push them underneath. Sometimes they do tend to go above if you're not careful, so you do have to make sure that you get it quite well and firm underneath. Right, as you can see, that's nicely on. So what we can do is we can stick that down. But as you see, we're a little bit off on the corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this strip off and just move it over a little tiny bit. If you do find that it does go too far, it's not the end of the world. You can move it around. You do get the opportunity to do that. If, of course, like I've done, where you can see that I've used the strip before, that's because I've done test fitting and I've removed it and I've put it back on. But you do that at each end. You put your connecting corners on. You feed it underneath until you get that connection. And then you clip them down. Now, you may be lucky, you may not be. In this instance, I think I might not be, but we'll see how much we can get it centralised using these connectors that we've got. And that's about as best as I can get with these particular connectors. I could make it a little, for example, just 1 bit shorter, and it would bring it in slightly. Do I need to do that? I don't think so, to be honest. It really is down to your personal preference. What I'm going to do with this length of strip is I'll pull off the tape off the back, and I'm going to fit it in a similar position, because we know now where it's going to roughly end up. Again, there is a slight amount of curve on this. In fact, it's actually a compound curve, so it's going to be somewhat difficult to work with. Now, one thing I did notice while I was sticking this down here is we do have this USB connection. I really can't afford to avoid that. Really, it is there. So, I mean, I could either cut it 1 strip back, and then move it and go round it, or I could try and work with it. What I'll do is I'll get a little bit extra strip and see how much we've got to work with. Because there's already a join there. See, for example, if I did that, that's going to be too long, and that's going to be too short. That's going to be significantly shorter than what I actually need. Even if I say where it pulls in, that's really not going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it for a little bit longer than I actually need, and we'll make the adjustments. So here we go here. So we're going to cut this strip again. And I say, what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep everything in the same order. So as you can see at the top, we've got DC 12 volts, green, red, white and blue. So round the edge will be the DC 12 volts. So I'm going to put this in here with the DC 12 volt being at the top. And as you can see, I absolutely hate these connectors. They do work, but they can be a little bit of a pain. If I was doing this on something that I wasn't going to have access to for very often, I would probably solder it rather than using these press fit connectors. But like I say, they do work. You can get various different types. But like, as you can see, this one's giving me a right old mess around. But there you go. That's in. Everything's on the connector. So we click that back down again. And as you can see, we are really too long for that. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do, because it's going to make my life a little bit easier, I'll put the other connector on the other end. I'm going to pause the video while I do that, and then I'll come back to you with the ends connected. What I've had to do is I've had to trim this down a little bit, mainly because I really couldn't. It actually went too close to the edges, and it would have looked a bit rubbish, to be honest. But what I did notice is that the adhesive on this old tape is really not going to cut it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off a little bit of this foam tape, not a lot. We don't need a lot, but what I am going to do is I'm going to trim it into two halves, because I don't need it to be that wide. As I say, this is just, it is just double-sided tape from the likes of Screwfix. So you don't have to get nothing special. I suppose you could use normal double-sided tape if you felt the need to. As I said, I don't need lots of it, and it doesn't have to be wide. So as you can see, I've cut it into two parts. And what I'm going to do is I'll get the first part. I'm actually going to put it under this length, this side here, as to where I feel that it's going to be. Just double check to make sure that it's going to be nice and central. Yeah, that's pretty good. So what I'll do is I'll make sure that that's stuck down nice and firm. I'll pull off there. As you can see, it's quite sticky, so bear that in mind. Make sure that you get it as good a fit as you can. I normally attach it to the tape first, to be completely honest, but this shouldn't really be too much of a sufferance. But as I say, make sure you got it flat across there. As you can see from this side, because with LED strip it can't be a circle, you've got to actually have a start and an end point. There doesn't have to be anything on the end, but it does have to end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my connector here. I might actually put it in here. There's nothing underneath that's going to cause it a problem. So, for example, somewhere like here will be fine. I can have the wires hanging out if I wanted to. I could technically even put it somewhere like there, or even over here. However, just bear in mind you're going to have more cables hanging out the back of your computer. If you wanted to, even somewhere like there, really. But you try not to cross the cable too many times with what you've got. And then you should be able to get a reasonably good effect. So I'm going to put the tape on the actual tape this time, purely for the fact is it's going to be a little bit easier. Hopefully there won't be any failures on the tape side. There has been before with working with this stuff, because I say it's not the most super quality in the world, but it was quite a reasonable price. And of course, reasonable price is also a good thing. I don't really feel that there's any need to put any under here, but what I'm going to do, just for peace of mind, because say this is old strip, and I have used it before. I'm just going to get a few bits of tape. Again, I'm just cutting them in half purely for the fact I don't need it as full width. I'm going to cut that in half. And that way I can put a little bit underneath. Just got to make sure I get it in the right place, which is on the Dell side. And once you've got it on there, you just pull the cover off and just stick it down. Again, you don't have to do that. For peace of mind, probably a good idea. The bottom side is going to be a little bit harder because it's right on the edge, so I've cut a little bit extra off. So I'm going to put on the edge there. I've got another few bits. Do the same up the other side. Right on the edge. And just a few small bits so it doesn't fall off or start to dangle. And then we can pull the protective cover off, like so. Do that all the way along. And then you can line it up where you want it to be. We've already done this once, so it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. And along the edge there. I mean, that button might be a bit of a problem. Might not. What I'm going to do though is just to keep this a little bit sane, is I'm just going to cut a little bit of tape off You don't need a lot, just a small square for underneath this this edge here, so that'll stick down nice. You could probably do the same to this corner. That's actually not too bad. That's not too bad. What I am going to do though is I will save a little bit for when we do the bottom corner. Right, what I'm going to do now. Right, that's all stuck well. Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to get out the soldering iron and solder up a connector for the end there, and then what I'll do is I'll restart the video and we'll go from there. All right, see you in a minute. Right, okay, as you can see, I've laid all the tape out. I've stuck it down in a couple of places that I wasn't overly happy with. All of the corners are on. I've mounted the controller on the back of the monitor, and I've used some sticky pads and zip tied down both the power and the remote. You don't necessarily have to do that. I just don't want to put any strain. I want to keep the cables out of the way. I've made myself up a little cable, as you can see here, to connect to the controller. Generally, when you've got LED tape, you don't have to do this. The reason you don't have to do this is because you normally get one with it, but I'd actually completely run out, so I had to make one up. So that's why I paused the video. So as you can see, it's all set up, it's raring to go. So what we're going to do now is, if we get your mobile phone, and if we download the app for Magic Home, and then we select Magic Home, right, now as you can see, this particular controller isn't actually on yet, so what we've got to do is we've got to put it in factory reset mode. I've used this before, I've tested it, but what we're going to do is we're going to power it up, and then it will start to flash continuously and ask if you want to search. So I'm going to power it up, and then we'll go and search for the controller. It's quite bright. I don't know how this is going to come across. Unfortunately, there's no way that I can stop that at the present moment. So what you do is you add the device. Add device. LED net 965D12. So you add that. What it does is it tries to connect that to your Wi-Fi. As you can see, it connects it directly. I'm just going to enter my Wi-Fi details. Right, it's currently connecting the lights. Let's move that a little bit closer so you can see. Right, it's now asking me to connect my phone to the same Wi-Fi as the lights, so I'm going to do that now. It says that the controller is the 965D12, and it's added successfully. So you click the done button. The controller is now on your list. So if you go into it, at the present moment it's on 100% green. So let's just turn that down slightly. And from here you can control whatever you want to control. I mean, you know, you can change the colour, you can change the brightness. As you can see, we've got red, green, blue. You can go any particular version of that. You can have it as a mic as well. What I'll do is I'll put it on, even though I don't really want to play any music for copyright. It should start to flash in line with my voice. So I suppose if you've got it somewhere that you don't mind having it like that, you could have it almost as a party light. You can also set it to music on your device. And you can also set it as a camera as well. So if you was to set, for example, you wanted to look at a particular colour. If I said I wanted to go with, I don't know, I'm looking for something here that would work. Let's try this green. So we select this green. Oh. Capture colour. And as you can see, we've got a little bit of difficulty with that purely by the fact that it's so bright. It doesn't actually quite see the colour very well. But any which way, go back, set it to white. And there we go. I'm going to remount the light, remount the screen, and then we'll go from there. As you can see, we've mounted everything. Everything's nice and tidy. Everything's stuck on well. And we'll see how we go from there. There you go. That's how to add a LED backlight to your monitor. If you've got any questions, leave a comment. And see you next time. Bye.